Hello again. Today I'm going to be talking about why I think some modern cards are overvalued and the reasons behind it. Personally, I think it's a lot about recency bias and a bit of gambler's fallacy where people think things are more likely to happen than they actually are. And to explain this concept, I'm going to be giving a few examples with real life cards I have and then comparing them to what cards are selling for in the market, newer cards at the moment. The inspiration for this video actually came from another channel called Baseball Card Collector Investor Dealer, I think that's the name. But he actually talked about a similar thing happening in the baseball card industry. And although I'm not into baseball cards or I'm not into any other sport cards, actually just AFL, but you can really use the ideas and the discussion and knowledge from other hobbies and then relate them back to the AFL market. And I think this is a really good way to kind of predict into the future and work out what's undervalued and overvalued. So with that, I'm just going to get into it and show a few of my cards and start the comparisons. Okay, so the first example out of the gate is this Chris Judd Gold Draft Pick Signature. This is the one numbered out of 225, not individually numbered, but it's out of 225. So Judd obviously is a legend of the game. He's actually already in the Hall of Fame, which I only worked out recently, but there's only two people who have debuted after 2000 that are in the Hall of Fame, one being Jonathan Brown. And I think Johnny Brown got in a bit earlier because he finished his career a bit earlier. Injuries kind of hampered him a bit, so he had to cut it a bit short. And the other reason being that Johnny Brown was drafted in 2000, so he was the earliest year after 2000 that you can be drafted. That's the reason he got in early. But for Judd, being a 2001 draftee, so this is cards from the 2002 release, it just shows how much impact he's had as a player, and I'd say he's a top 3 modern player of the game. And he's undoubtedly a top 5 modern player of the game in my eyes. Now, the card I'm going to be comparing this to is the Sam Walsh Draft Pick Signature. So Sam Walsh, everyone knows who he is. He's 20 years old. He's burst onto the scene. Certainly an amazing player. No one can argue that how much talent and how much upside he has in AFL and also in the hobby. But the thing is, his draft pick signature is already selling for $600. This Chris Judd signature, I bought this for $200. And the point of this video is I really think people overestimate how much growth there is in those younger players. You see them and you go, well, they're so good, so young, they could be the next greatest of all time, and that means their prices will go through the roof. But you just have to look at the past players who were considered the greatest of all time to see that the new players may be actually a tad overvalued. So the way I try to look at it is, what chance does Sam Walsh have of having a career like Chris Judd? In my eyes, lots of people might say, oh, he's definitely going to have a better career than Chris Judd. He's going to be the next big thing. But in reality, I think the chances of being a Chris Judd level player in legacy is literally like 5%. People will probably say that's a bit low, but you underestimate how many players come through the system, highly touted, and then injuries get in the way, playing for a bad team gets in the way, just kind of falling off the rails. Lots of things can happen in your career to make it so that you don't have the legacy as someone like Chris Judd. And I think there's even more recent examples of this. Just take Paddy Cripps, for example. He was killing it. He was one of the most collectible players in the league all through 2018 to 2020 or so. He was in a very similar position to where Walsh was when Cripps was 20 years old. However, the injuries he had this year kind of crippled him a bit and let Walsh take over as the most collectible or the most influential Carlton player in the team. And all of a sudden, Cripps's legacy is kind of in a bit of trouble. He's in that in-between stage where he can either bounce back next year or he can kind of fall to the wayside a bit and become more like a Trent Cotchin, who still is a great player, captain of the club. All the supporters love him, and so they should, but he's never going to be remembered as one of the top players in the AFL like Chris Judd. Okay, so let's keep it moving. Next example is this card, which I've been looking for a long time. That's the Nat 5 Platinum Draft Pick. You guys are probably sick of me talking about it, but yeah, finally got it in the collection. Let's just take a second to look it over. It's actually such a great card. The colours really cool with the Freo colours. Matches the Platinum look well. The issue with this card is that the edges and the corners seem to get really easily dinged, and that's because this was actually an impact pull. Unlike the Dustin Martin was a redemption, but this one's impact. You can see pretty much all the corners and the edges just have a bit of white to it. It's not in horrible condition, but it's definitely not in pristine condition. And that's going to be another thing that's going to be really rare in the future if you can find one of these cards in perfect condition. If I did, then this is the kind of card that I'd be sending off to somewhere like PSA or Beckett to get it in a holder, because it's super rare to find this in perfect condition. But moving on with the comparison, I bought this for $200, and if anyone wants to sell me them, I'm looking for more. I'm hoping to double up, triple up, whatever it takes. But I'm going to be comparing this card today to the Matt Rowell draft pick signature. Rowell is in a similar position to Walsh, except that Rowell has been injured a lot at the start of his career. So unlike Walsh, he hasn't been able to put together like a 30-vote Brownlow season just because he hasn't been able to get in the field for that long. But other than that, he's very similar in the way that he's clearly extremely talented. He has a chance to become one of the best players in the AFL. But that doesn't necessarily mean he is going to become that, especially because he's got injuries so early in his career. And I just compare that to someone like Fife, who is a dual Brownlow medalist. He's locked in as one of the great modern players of our time. And there's nothing that can change that. He can get injured and retire tomorrow, and he's still the same player. So this is $200. And I think the Rowell, I'll put up a recent sale, but it runs between $200 to $300 as well. It might even be a bit more these days. And I just think the risk you take on by getting someone like Rowell is a bit unnecessary. And yes, he may turn out to be one of the better players in the AFL. Yes, he may actually live up to his talent, like so many people don't. But even if he does, like, who's the best player in the AFL right now? Probably Dustin Martin. And Dustin Martin's best draft rookie card goes for $800 to $1,000. So even if he does become that next big thing, that's kind of where the ceiling is at the moment. And I think what people don't also think about is the long-term prices. So if people are buying Rowell with the thought that he might break out in the next couple of seasons and win a Brownlow, then that might be a good investment over the short to medium term. But if you're thinking about the long-term investability, he's going to have to retire at some point. And when he retires, a lot of the hype will drop out from around him, just like it has for someone like Chris Judd. When Chris Judd was playing, he was the hottest thing on the market, whether it be for West Coast or for Carlton. But once you retire, and even if you get accolades after, like getting in the Hall of Fame, people just tend to forget about you a bit. And when there's not hype and emotion driving up the prices, there's nothing left except for pure legacy and being a pure legend of the game. And if someone like Rowell or Walsh doesn't cement that legacy, then in the long term, their prices are going to fall quite drastically. Whereas people who have already got that in their bank, like Judd, is a much more safe bet into the future. No, it's not going to double in price overnight. Whereas the Rowell could double in price in the season. It's very possible. And that's why it encourages people, and that's why it pulls people into it, because it's the chance of that quick, easy money. But something like this, over the long term, you have 99% more of a chance to make money on something like this, I think. Okay, so let's get into the final example. We've got Nick Riewoldt. So this is Nick Riewoldt's draft pick signature, 2001. Beautiful card. Nick Riewoldt's another person that's just a lock for the Hall of Fame. He'll be in there sooner rather than later, I think. And this card is extremely cheap. I bought this for $80. I think it goes now for about $100, so not much more. And the card I'm going to be comparing this one to is Bailey Smith's rookie insert. Not his draft pick signature, but his rookie insert. So it's Bailey Smith's second best card. The first thing people are going to say when I'm comparing these two is that this one has a print run of 770 and Bailey Smith's, I think, is 275 for the rookie cards that year. So there is a bit of a differential in that. But that's not everything. Numbering's not everything. Like I've said previously, the number is pretty arbitrary if it doesn't have some meaning behind it. And the fact is, this is Riewoldt's best rookie card, and the rookie parallel was Bailey Smith's second best rookie card. So one's a lock for the Hall of Fame, one's a pretty new talent, prodigious talent, but still a new talent. And he's definitely not guaranteed anything in his career. So I think you've kind of got the point by now, but I'm just going to mix it up a bit by saying the three options I've given, Walsh, Rowell, and Bailey Smith, I actually think those are all not too bad buys. And what does this tell us? I think, number one, it tells us that these kind of cards are severely undervalued in my opinion. And in the future, like I said, you're not going to see 100% returns in a year, but these are the kind of cards that will give you that steady 10% return a year. And number two, what does it say? I think Rowell, Walsh, and Bailey Smith aren't horrible because you know that they're quality. But players in Optimum, who lots of them you haven't seen them play, and some of them you've only seen play one season, to buy a Jamara card for like $1,000 or to buy a Nick Cox card for $1,000 just blows my mind, because you're pretty much gambling on them being as good a player as Riewoldt, as Fife, as Judd, as Dusty, as Dangerfield, you're betting on them being at that caliber, when the reality is only about 1% of the AFL ends up being at that level. Even the people who are highly touted, even the Bryce Gibbs of our generation, he was the #1 pick. The Jaeger O'Meara's, he was supposed to be the next big thing when he was drafted. So I think it's a really important thing to keep in mind. And I think even though I've said the Walsh, Rowell and Bailey Smith cards are slightly overvalued, they're not the worst options. The worst options is buying the completely new, unproven players. But in the end, it comes down to your risk tolerance, how much you're willing to bet and gamble, and it also comes down to your strategy, whether you're a short-term investor or medium-term, or on the third option, you just want the card, and if you just want the card, then no price is too bad. So in summary, time is short, and the same players people are emotionally buying now and thinking, oh, I have to have that card right now, in the future they're going to be grouped with these same players, these players who have ended their career. And on a long enough timeline, all these players become part of the same era of the 2000s kind of modern era. And in the future, you won't worry about who's hyped this week, who kicked 4 goals this week or got 40 touches. You're going to think about it from a career standpoint. And the players that will shine through are the players that have had the best careers. So that's kind of the thought I want to leave this video with, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.